Welcome to the October 2019 edition of City Connection. This is the live television program where you, citizens of Grand Rapids and your surrounding community, get to ask questions of your mayor here in Grand Rapids. Mayor Rosalind Bliss joins me in the studio. I'm Linda Galash, your host for this show. We come together to offer to the community an opportunity to hear about efforts from City Hall and beyond. We provide opportunities for your questions and comments. You can do that later in the show. And then today, we specifically welcome to the show new police chief here in Grand Rapids, Payne. Not new to Grand Rapids or the police department, though. We'll hear a little bit about him, a bit about what's brought him to this role at this point. He joined the police department 30 plus years ago, so we're going to hear a little bit about the new chief's vision. You can also take part in the show. We have a few ways that we'll put on the screen for you to do that by GRTV's Facebook, email, Twitter as well, and then we're streaming live at the Rapidian.org. We're doing this live right now on GRTV channel 24 on a Comcast cable system. And we'll get right back to we're going to actually join the mayor now. Mayor, welcome to the show as we kind of, as you said, wing it for a little bit as I kind of figure out my place here. Well, it is October and there's a lot going on, and just want to start a little bit with some great big updates on things that we've talked about in the past. We've had, I was mentioning to you before the show, it says that on October 10th, that's this week, that's Thursday this week, there's going to be opportunity to learn a little bit about the task force on elected representatives, and that's some feedback from the community on that. It's a community-led effort.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, I just posted it over the weekend to remind folks. So as you said, a couple months ago, the City Commission put together a task force of folks from all parts of the city, every ward. Every commissioner had an opportunity to appoint someone, and then we had 3 designated spots. And that effort is being led actually by the committee, so they selected a chairperson of that committee, of that task force, with the intent to look at 4 questions that have been brought to our table by community groups, looking at changing really how local government is structured. Everything from the number of commissioners there are, to the size of the wards, to how vacancies are filled, to impact on primary elections, as well as potentially moving elections from odd year to even year. So what we did as a commission is we put together this task force. They have been learning about those 4 issues. They are having community feedback sessions. I anticipate it'll be a mix of an update on what they have learned so far, and then getting feedback from the community. So that happens this week, as you said, on Thursday night. And they're holding, on the same night, they're holding sessions in all 3 wards. So those will be going on simultaneously. So you can learn more about where those are and the times by going to the city website. You can also look on my Facebook page. I just posted an update about that, I believe, on Saturday or Sunday. Okay,
so some update opportunities then on the 10th. One such situation that looks to address is the filling of an elected seat that is vacated. The city comptroller seat was vacated a number of weeks ago. City has laid out a timeline on filling that, but just wanted to get an update.
Yeah, thank you for that. So we are currently accepting applications for the city comptroller. So as you know, our former comptroller, Sarah Vanderwerf, she resigned and she took a job in the private sector. And so that opened up that seat, and per our charter, which is what we're governed by, the elected body, we are responsible for filling that vacancy up until the next election. So this is a partial term that we'll be filling. And timeline-wise, we're accepting applications in the month of October. So the last day to get your application in is October 31st. Then those applicants will be vetted by our city clerk. You can apply through the city clerk's office. City clerk's office is helping the commission lead that process. The application is relatively simple. There's a couple eligibility requirements. One, that you have lived in the city for at least 6 months, and that you're 18 years old and a registered voter. So if you're interested, you can apply, and then what will happen is the clerk will vet those applicants to make sure that you are eligible. And then once we know the slate of candidates, the City Commission will decide whether we want to interview all candidates for first round interviews. And it'll probably depend on the number of applicants that we get, or we'll break into a subcommittee of the City Commission to go through the first round. We'll do that in probably a couple weeks into November. We're kind of looking at the week of probably November 12th. And then we will move forward, probably the top 3 candidates, to go through a second interview with the full body, and then we'll have an opportunity for public input on those final candidates. My hope is that the City Commission will make a decision sometime in December, and then we are anticipating that that individual will be sworn in at the end of the year for a January 1 start date.
Okay, and then a couple further explanations. This term was to run through December of 2021?
Yes, yeah. So it would be serving basically 2 years, but the individual, if we keep elections in odd years, the individual, if they chose to run for the office, they would be up in, the following year. They would have to file to run in April of 2021 and then campaign.
Okay, and then a brief description of what that role is all about, the comptroller of the city.
Yeah, so the comptroller serves, they oversee a department, so they work with a deputy comptroller who is full-time, and ultimately their responsibility is to, they sign all the checks for the city, they work with our auditors when we have an audit of all city finances, and then they work closely with our CFO and our treasurer on issues related to finances. But ultimately they are charged with writing of the checks and the payments that go through the city. So procurement happens in a different department, income tax happens in a different department, assessments happen in a different department. So they're the ones that if you have internally, if you have a bill that needs to be paid, it goes through the comptroller's office.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little bit more on elections. We have an election here November 5th.
We do.
What's on the ballot?
Yeah, it's an important election, as all elections are, but it's a local election. We have a number of things on the ballot, depending on what ward you live in. And so we have city commissioners who are on the ballot in all 3 wards. In the 3rd ward, Commissioner Moody is on the ballot. However, he's running unopposed. We have a race in the 1st ward here with 2 candidates, and then the same thing in the 2nd ward. And then there's a mayoral race. There's a library commission race, so you want to make sure that you are voting for your library commission. And then we have a ballot question related to the Parks millage. So the City Commission, probably about 8 weeks ago, so early August, we supported the request by a community group to put a ballot question related to funding for parks on the ballot. So currently we have a parks millage. It was a 7-year sunset, and so it ends next year. So this would be a renewal of that millage, a slight increase, and then also there would not be a sunset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did see that the city put out some information that there's in each ward some condensing of the actual precincts for voting. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So every year we're always looking at precinct locations, and the city clerk takes a close look at those. We look at a number of issues. One, we want to make sure that the polling locations that we've been using are still available and accessible. Sometimes we get feedback from prior elections where people have struggled either with parking or accessibility. So there's a whole host of reasons why we may change or merge precincts. So there are a couple changes. For anyone impacted by those precinct changes, the clerk's office sends out a notice to those registered voters. So if you are impacted, you should have received a postcard in the mail. And then we'll make sure that we continue to get the word out. But interestingly, I was talking to our city clerk a couple weeks ago, and based on the response during the primary election, we anticipate that the vast majority of individuals are going to vote absentee. So with the changes that happened last year with allowing more people to sign up to be on the permanent absentee list, the number of folks who have requested to do that has grown exponentially. It's well over 20,000 in the city. And during the primary election, we saw that over 50% of the folks that voted absentee. And we expect that's going to happen again in November. And so the polling locations we'll continue to look at, because if we continue to see a reduction in the number of people who go to the polls, we may look at other mergers in the future. With that being said, we want to make sure that there is a voting location in close proximity to where people live. So even if the numbers continue to go down, in some locations we'll keep the precinct where it is.
So is this all or partially response to the actually expansion of the the early voting option?
Yeah, no, the changes that you're seeing for this November election, it's related to the location and the availability of that location. So sometimes they're not available anymore because school's in place or school has opened up or a church has changed hands and is now in private sector hands. So there's a number of reasons why those have changed.
Okay. Next question I want to ask you a little bit about is the city has created a new position. It's called emergency manager, something that counties often have, but city has one now. Talk a little bit about the decision to create that. We've had some severe weather recently that has put out some emergency alerts. Wanted to hear a little bit more about it. Yeah,
so this was led and is being led by our fire chief, who very often when we have critical incidents, particularly around weather or emergencies, he's at the table helping with those emergencies along with our police department. And so this person will full-time be working with all of the other jurisdictions, looking at larger scale potential emergencies, but then also really looking at making sure that we have plans in place for the city, not just severe weather events, but any other type of emergency. So this person will be singularly focused on making sure that we are prepared for any type of emergency that we may experience. Unfortunately, for a number of reasons, and global warming is the primary one, we're seeing more and more extreme weather events. So even a couple weeks ago with the severe winds that we had neighborhoods that had significant damage. In fact, even in my neighborhood, I live over in Fulton Heights, and we still have massive tree limbs still in the right-of-way that we haven't been able to get to yet. A couple houses had trees fall on them. We had power lines down. So it's happening not just during those cold winter months and when we have a polar vortex, but we're also seeing it in the spring with severe rain events and wind and then tornadoes.
Tell us a little bit about the person that's filling that role now.
So I've only met her once, but I know she has a ton of experience behind her, and the chief was really excited that she was able to come to our community and join us. But I anticipate we'll be learning a lot more about her. In fact, we should invite her to come on the show maybe in a couple months when she gets her feet under her.
All right. Her name, Allison Farrell?
Yes. Yep.
All right.
Farrell. Yeah.
All right. We'll get her here.
Yes.
A couple of things I want to ask you about when it comes to parks. There was an announcement that Briggs Park has reopened. It's changes centered on accessibility and a few other things, and then groundbreaking for Plaster Creek when it comes to an outdoor classroom and a few things like that.
Yeah, so that's really exciting. Briggs Park, I hope you get over there to see it. We've actually spent quite a bit of time looking at our parks and making sure that in each area of the city we have an accessible park. So we know that there are children and families that live in the community where they have some type of disability, and we want to make sure that parks are accessible to them. So we were able to do that over at Ottawa and now at Briggs, so that's really exciting. And then Plaster Creek, if you haven't had a chance to get over there, you should take a moment to go look at this park. It's really phenomenal. What I love most about it is that the students, there were a number of students from Grand Rapids Public Schools that actually helped on the design of that park. And then the really cool thing about it is that it's a natural play area. So we worked really closely with the designer and the school and then our forestry department. And they were able to identify logs, significant logs, and in fact many of them from storms where we lost huge trees. They were out at our Domtar site, so they were able to go through and identify logs right here from our city, and then they use those to create playgrounds. So all of the play equipment is natural. They took logs and they made rocking chairs out of them and climbing, statues and bridges for kids to play on. But it truly is an example of a natural playground where the kids from Burton can come and use it. And then they're building this huge outdoor classroom. So teachers will be able to take students out of the building into nature and teach them outside right there in the park. So it's absolutely stunning. It's really fun. But I think it's most special because kids were intricately involved in developing that park.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a break and invite back Chief Payne. This is City Connection. We will take a quick break. Chief Eric Payne will be with the mayor shortly. We'll be right back.
Hello and welcome back. I'm really happy to have with me our brand new police chief. Can I still call you brand new?
You can.
Okay,
Yes.
so relatively new. He's not, as Linda said, he's not new to Grand Rapids. He's been here a long time and has spent his career at the Grand Rapids Police Department. But more recently, he was selected as our police chief. So Chief Payne is with us today. What I'd like to do is just give you some time to talk about your life and what led you to law enforcement. I know a lot of people know you, but there's still a lot of people in our community who don't. So why don't you talk a little bit about where you grew up and what drew you into law enforcement in the first place?
I grew up in a small town south here called Dowagiac, and I came to this area to attend Grand Valley State. And I really didn't have a major in mind. It was possibly education. And then I met Larry Johnson, who was actually with the Grand Rapids Public Schools, and he was an officer there. And that was the first opportunity I had to speak with a black man that was a police officer in uniform and everything. And I thought that was interesting. And I took an intro class to criminal justice shortly after that and decided that was going to be my career path. I was fortunate enough after I worked on campus for about 6 months as a police officer. And afterward, I was fortunate enough to get hired by the city. And I've been here ever since, and had a lot of great opportunities, and more importantly, met a lot of great people in the city and built up a lot of relationships over the last 30 years.
Yeah, I love that. I didn't realize that one of your mentors was Larry.
Absolutely.
And he's still at Grand Rapids Public Schools.
He is, and after he was actually a police officer out there when I was a freshman, so he actually worked for the Grand Rapids Police Department, became a sergeant, but he had the opportunity to go to Grand Rapids Public Schools and has been there ever since. And as I mentioned, the relationships you build, that started back in Grand Valley, and I actually talked to him today, so we still have a good working relationship with the schools.
We do, and I do want to touch on that because I know even this past summer you worked really closely with them to look at what we can do to utilize their resources and their relationships to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure our neighborhoods are safe.
Absolutely, and a big part of it is us being in the schools, and Larry and the entire school administration have been very receptive to it. They understand the need for children to see us in a non-enforcement contact, so that we're out there answering questions and just being a person with them. So every opportunity we can, we try to get into the schools.
Yeah, and so you've been with the department for 30, is it 33?
No, it's 32.
32
September
years.
14th
Okay.
actually was my anniversary date, and which is kind of ironic because I just swore in my first class of recruits. There were 18 of them, some prior certified, some of them went through the Grand Valley State Police Academy, which is what I did 32 years ago. And it's a good mix. We're very happy with them. There was a very competitive process, and they were the ones we were selected. But it's really neat after 32 years seeing a brand new batch of police officers in the city, and I love their enthusiasm. So we're anxious to get them. They still have some more training to do, but eventually we'll get them out there and they'll be in the community also. Yeah,
you've done a great job of getting out and recruiting and talking to people right here in our community about why they should think about law enforcement as an option.
Sure. And one thing I'd love to touch on is our Grow Our Own, where we start very early on with Police Explorers. And there's more information on our website to go into each individual program. One I'll touch on is our internship. College age students can come and work within the police department, and they get to get a little bit behind the curtain view of what we do. Plus, we pay them very well, thank you. But I think it's important with the amount of work that they do. They do some incredible amount of work, and it allows us to get a look at them, and they get a look at us, and we have hired from that pool. So As I mentioned, Police Explorers, we have Citizens or Youth Police Academy, the intern program. It's very important for us to look within our city for people that want to go into this field.
Yeah, you know, Chief, I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like sometimes we hear a lot of media about a reaction to an incident and not nearly enough about the work that you're doing day in and day out, especially with youth throughout the community, whether it's at the Boys and Girls Club or, as you said, the Youth Police Academy and the Youth Explorers program. A lot of folks don't know about that.
Right, and we've had that program for years now, and we recruit from GRPS or other schools. And the Youth Police Academy, they actually go through and it's like a mini police academy. We give them physical training, they do defensive tactics, they're in the classroom learning laws and everything. So it's really important for them it's like a first start for them. And then our Explorer program is ongoing throughout the year, and they compete at a state level, and they've done quite well at that state level where they'll go away for a week and compete with other Explorer programs. So it's just exposing them to the law enforcement, I think, is really unique because some kids don't have that opportunity, and we're always looking to get more into it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've met a number of the students, and I know they love the experience.
Yes.
So many of them, I think even they go in and they're interested, but pretty quickly they realize that this is a real option for them.
And even with our intern program, you don't necessarily have to be on the track for criminal justice or law enforcement or any of the other fields in criminal justice. We have students that are able to come and work in our department and experience the law enforcement experience. Many times they get the bug, and we've seen them want to change their college track, and they end up going into criminal justice. So it's just exposing to what we really are about.
Yeah, well, and you've also, your department has done outreach specific to women, which has been really impressive. And then I know the department has had these weekend opportunities for folks to learn more about what the agility test is. And I know this winter I went and watched one of them, and I was shocked at some of those tests that people have to pass. And it's good to let people know.
It is. Those are actually state requirements. It's not requirements that the police department mandates. It's mandated by the state, and we want to expose people to let them see what to do. And this is for our non-certified officers or people who are not licensed at this time. But every police officer has to pass that test at one point. So it gives them an idea of what they need to prepare, what they're doing well at, and what they need to improve upon, instead of going into it blind and not knowing.
Because people could pass all of the tests and then fail the agility test because they're not prepared. So making sure that they realize that there's a multitude of requirements that you have to at least meet the standard for in order to get in for an interview and be considered.
And you also mentioned we had a women's recruiting day where we were able to bring in a bunch of people, but females. And they allowed me to say the welcome, then they kicked me out. But former officers came back, former female officers. So we're trying to diversify the department as much as we can. We're still looking for the best candidates, and hopefully we can draw upon some of these efforts to get the people in.
Yeah, well, Chief, that's a great spot to take a little break, and then we'll come back over here and we'll do some additional Q&A with you. So thank you so much for being here and for all of your leadership and work in our community.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Thank you.
Why do local businesses spend their marketing dollars with Community Media Center? Because it's more than just passive advertising. It is an investment in the community that is eager to invest in you. The Community Media Center makes Grand Rapids vital. We collaborate with local businesses and support events in West Michigan. Inclusive. We amplify local voices that tell the diverse and ever-changing stories of our community. Creative. We encourage artists to showcase and expand their talents and to shape the look and sound of Grand Rapids. Marketing with the CMC will let our community know who you are and increase brand recognition for your business. At the end of the day, we are a resource that will keep you connected to the community. Share your message with diverse audiences by underwriting with WYCE, GRTV, Wealthy Theater, and the Rapidian. Join us in building a stronger community through media. Contact us at marketing@grcmc.org.
Welcome back to City Connection with Mayor Bliss. I'm here with Chief of Police Eric Payne, and we're going to learn a little bit about your vision for the department. You've been there 32 years. You've seen it from the inside. You've actually had leadership positions in other chief vacancy times. I want to hear about your vision now that you're in this position.
Yes, I think we have a good department. We have a lot of good qualified or high quality people in the department, professional people. What I would like to see in the future, I really believe we've lacked in relationship building out in the community. I think we can do more of that in getting people out in the community. We've talked a little bit about our recent hires. Every one of those that we interviewed for they touched on those type things, and those are the things I'm looking for. We just recently had promotions, and those people that went into deputy chief, captain, lieutenant, and sergeant's position is what I'm also looking for, that they understand the necessity of interacting with the community and being out in the community building relationships. From that, overall, building trust. And I do believe if we have a community that trusts us and we trust them, ultimately our goal is to have a safe community. I recently was able to attend over the weekend several different events, the African American Festival, the Mexican Festival, the West Side Street Fair. Our officers put on Rock, which was down at Rosa Parks Circle. All great things that are happening in the city. And we only do those things because we have a safe and welcoming community. Those are the things that I want to expand upon and continue to grow.
So there have been in the last few months some incidents of pretty high violence moments, at least. And is this really what you're saying? The solution will be really building those relationships, being out there in the community policing style, getting together with people, being seen, experiencing.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a role in law enforcement, and we will continue that role. But I really believe building those relationships and the community understanding that they can trust us will go a long way in not only deterring and preventing these crimes, but also solving these crimes. We've had cooperation recently on some of the incidents, and we hope to expand upon that and continue. And I believe that's because of the level of trust that has improved. We can always do better, and we'll continue to work on that.
How will you measure that? I mean, I guess you get the feel that there's this confidentiality that's relying on police to maybe get some information when there is incidents out there, but how will you measure the success on that as we look a year from now and we're having this conversation, for example?
Sure. I think if we look very simplistic at people willing to talk to us, there are there have been times when people will not even talk to us, victims of crimes. I think we're turning the table on that, at least I hope so, because it's not just a police matter, this violence that's out there. I mean, you can look at the poverty level, homelessness, a lot of societal issues that are out there that are impacting us. We are there as a partner, not just the only solution to this. And we have to be open to partnering with different departments, agencies, to build that trust up. So we're working on, it's continuous, and we can't just stop now. I think we have a little bit of momentum, we'll continue with it.
Okay. Well, we do have some questions coming in. It's
Sure.
not every day you get the police chief in the studio, and people are eager to ask you a few things, and they're very specific. So I'm going to give you the first one. This comes from Hugo on Facebook, and he says, when are you going to do something about South Division, the block between Cherry and Oaks? There's usually about 40 people selling drugs night and day, public urinating and defecating.
Yes, we created about a year ago the Central Service Area, where we have a captain in charge of that area. Through promotions and movement, Captain Riley is now the new commander of that area. And what we look to do, again, as I mentioned before, it's not just a police issue. I think we need to draw upon everyone in the community to combat that. I've looked at different things other agencies have done. To combat homelessness, we partnered with the fire department in looking at the people frequency that we get sent on certain people, and trying to get them into the help they need. One of the things I look at, not only just our central area officers, but our community police specialists that work their area. They have a great working relationship with a lot of the missions that are there along Division Avenue and in the area, and also the social services that are down there, trying to steer people to the help that they need.
And I'll add, this really is a multifaceted issue that really takes a significant collaboration, not just with the city, but with the county. So there's been a task force in place at the county level going on about 18 months.
Yes.
In partnership with the county and the city, our fire department, our police department. We have someone around the table, the local hospitals, community mental health, some of our substance use providers, really looking at what are we doing, what's working, what's not working, where are the gaps in the community. There's currently an assessment going on right now looking at best practices in other communities, because the solution is not to arrest people.
Yes.
There are a lot of folks all across our community, but in certain areas like on Division, there's a concentration. There are individuals who are struggling with homelessness, and we know that there's core issues around substance use and mental health, trauma. And so in order to identify what are the services needed to best meet the needs of those individuals, it really takes all of us coming alongside them. Now, sometimes does the police department have to step in? Absolutely. When crimes are being committed, and that question alluded to some of the crimes that we see on Division, and we are actively working on that. But the solution is much more complicated. And the cities that are having significant success are the ones that are identifying how do you divert folks from jail, and how do you make sure that you have the services in your community to meet the needs, particularly for people who have really chronic, significant struggles. And that takes more time, and it takes resources. And as I said, it really takes us working closely with the county, Community Mental Health or Network 180, that is a county-wide service, and then also the hospitals, because having folks end up in the emergency room is not ideal either.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to keep going through the questions because people want to talk to you. Is it possible, this is from Andrea, it says, is it possible to equip the homeless with city jobs like cleaning the streets and the highways, city beautification and things like that to help provide them with some income and also help keep the city clean at the same time. Mayor, this sounds a little bit like an interview we had earlier, but just looking for the answer or at least something possible there.
Yeah, we have. So we actually, about 2.5 years ago, entered into an initial pilot with Next Steps of West Michigan, where the city contracts with them to do things just like that, to do alley cleanup, snow removal, right-of-way cleanup, and then they go out and they do outreach to folks who are panhandling, who are homeless, individuals who are re-entering, coming out of jail, and what they'll do is they'll offer day jobs to them, and then they provide a meal, access to other resources. So we did a pilot project with them, as I said, I think about 2 years ago. We made some tweaks to it last year, and then actually this year we expanded it. So we doubled the contract with them, and have been working really closely with them. I just got an initial report of the outcomes of that contract, and we're hoping to not just continue that, but to look at how we can expand it in the future. It's a great model. Other cities have done it. I think it's one of the solutions. It's not the only solution, but it's definitely one of the solutions.
Okay, and what are we seeing as far as moving people from one station to the next in terms of re-entry? It means really a real job, or not saying that's not real, but employment that is sustainable.
Yeah, so the work that Next Steps is doing, some of it is sustainable because they have other work as well, and some of the folks that they interact with end up getting a full-time job with them. But it is a short-term solution until they can get the resources and additional help that they need to find stable housing. If you go back to fundamental needs, it's really hard for people who don't have a roof over their head to have stable employment. So housing is a critical piece of the solution. I can't say that enough. Housing is, that's why I'm a big believer in the housing first model. People need to know that they have a safe place to sleep so they can get a good night's sleep, so that they can actually focus on not just looking for a job, but maintaining a job.
Okay.
So.
Thank you for that. We'll go to the next question, which actually piggybacks on a little bit of our conversation earlier. This is from Mo, and he says, there was a shooting recently, and I heard that there were no leads on finding the suspect. In this day and age with so much technology, why can't we find them? And then also the amount of violence in our city, what can we do as people in the community to help? So you touched on that, but maybe even explore a little further.
One of the things we're looking at is technology. And that's a discussion I'm having with the city manager right now, and seeing what best practices are out there. There's a number of them. It'd be really premature at this point to start spouting off different ones, but there certainly is technology. We have a good working relationship with the Michigan State Police Crime Lab in analyzing evidence that is located at scenes. But we'd like to expand upon that, and again, that's information that we're looking to have discussions on. As far as the community, again, I think it goes back to that level of trust. Many times we're not at these scenes where these incidents are occurring, and we can only ask people to be cooperative with us. That's the only way we're going to break this cycle of violence, because a lot of times we see that some of it's retaliatory. So if we can break that cycle of violence in the community, will assist us with that. It'll go a long way with reducing this violent crime that we've seen.
Yeah, and I'll add, the chief has added, or is in the process, I should say, of adding additional crime analysts.
We are.
That will beef up the detective unit as well. And we heard that loud and clear before the chief was in his position. We heard it, the city commission heard it from our department, and it was included in the budget that we passed in June.
In fact, one started today.
Oh, good.
And we're looking to add a third one in a not too distant future. And we have to look at data and work on where are the problems that are occurring to direct our officers. And the mayor mentioned adding positions. I want to mention that we do plan on having a second shift community police specialist. which we only have during the day now, Monday through Friday. Our hope is to have it pretty much Tuesday through Thursday in the afternoon. So we have additional people out there. And we were able to accomplish that by, it was based on a staffing and deployment study with recommendations coming in that we needed more robust civilian help. So we were able to add civilians to get officers out on the road doing police work, as opposed to, they're still doing police work now, but taking some of those clerical things away from them.
Okay, and there was that report. There was a pretty extensive consultant's examination of our department. There was recommendations for a certain amount of staffing. I don't know that we got all the way there this year, but how many positions have we added with this new hiring?
We've added 2 additional sworn and 3 civilians, and what that'll allow us to do is get 3 additional bodies plus those 2 sworn, which will help make up our second shift community police specialists.
So 5 total.
5 total. And you know, we're in discussions. There's not a police chief in this country that wouldn't take more resources. So I don't know what the magic number is, but it has to be sustainable. It has to be within the city budget. We all understand that. So it's working together with the city, and we were fortunate enough to add those positions and get them in place probably by the first of the year totally. But again, we added our crime analyst today.
Yeah, and I'll just add, one great thing that the chief has done and has made clear since he's been chief is also looking at those relationships and those connections that he has in the community. So he talked earlier about Grand Rapids Public Schools and Larry Johnson, and really looking at how do we make sure that we are working really closely with other organizations and individuals who have very similar and aligned goals as we do around making sure that our neighborhoods are safe.
Okay. All right. Do have one more I want to get to, because this one's been in the queue for a little bit, taking a little bit of different direction. This one has a little bit to do with traffic, so we'll see what your thoughts are on this. And this one is Lake Michigan Drive and Lane that intersection needs a traffic light. The person on Facebook is telling us that people run the lights, that stop sign all the time.
That's a stop sign. Yeah. So is that a 4-way or 2-way? That's a 4-way stop.
I believe
right?
so. Yes.
I'm trying to picture it in my head. I think it's a 4-way stop.
And one of the priorities I've made since becoming chief, actually it was before that, Deputy Chief of Operations, where I oversaw people in uniform, but focusing on high crash intersections, speeding, that's where we need to focus our enforcement. But part of that, it's not just enforcement alone, there's environmental design of the intersection. So we would look at traffic safety to see what could be done better at that intersection to reduce those type of incidents of crashes occurring. And then there's an education component. We need to do as much as we can. We have several different programs geared toward pedestrian and bicyclists, but a big component of that is educating the public to drive in a safe manner. But we will do enforcement, and that's what I've made a priority for speeding and those high crash intersections. So those 3 things hopefully will reduce the seriousness of those intersections having crashes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Eric Payne, last time you were on the show, you were Deputy Chief of Operations. Thanks for coming back as our police chief. We'll take a break.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And City Connection on GRTV. We'll be right back.
The Rapidian for the community provides an alternative.
To be the eyes of somebody who's not there.
It's more honest, more authentic, and more true.
And you do have the freedom to talk about things because they're things that need to be talked about, not because they'll get readers or viewers or clicks.
Sometimes it feels intimidating to write a news story or to write a story about a community issue. What I love about the Rapidian is that they make it really simple and easy.
So it's not like you have to meet this deadline by this time.
I'll be eating a sandwich in one hand and then I'm like typing in the other.
I love the freedom to be able to write from wherever.
I think it's a really powerful experience when people are able to tell their story and to be heard.
Anyone can have a voice.
Anybody can speak.
It's a platform for the community to tell its own story in a very authentic way, and that's powerful.
The community has to be involved in order for it to be sustainable. And so it tells you something about our community.
Welcome back to City Connection. And again, our thanks to Chief Eric Payne for joining us today on the show, talking with the mayor. Mayor, we've got a few minutes to cover a few more items, and let's start with just giving us a preview of what the city is addressing tomorrow at its regular meeting.
Yeah, thank you. So tomorrow we have a city commission meeting. We have full agendas on all of our standing committee meetings and then our evening meeting. A couple big ones I'll draw your attention to. Tomorrow we will be talking about going into a partnership relationship contract with the Michigan Land Bank. So as many people know, last year in December, the county unexpectedly dissolved the Kent County Land Bank. Which we had worked really closely with the Kent County Land Bank for a number of years, looking at county-wide tax foreclosed properties that were in the city, and working with the county land bank to make sure that those properties were being redeveloped. We had actually over the last 3 years worked with the county land bank to look at redeveloping those properties into affordable housing. So for folks making 80% AMI or less. And so with the county, when they dissolved the Kent County Land Bank, they gave 12 months for the county land bank to dissolve. So we've been working actually for months trying to figure out what we're going to do. We still have about 145 properties in the city that currently are owned by the Kent County Land Bank. And so back in March, we went to the Michigan Land Bank and we talked to them about working directly with them on these properties, and the value of the land bank for folks who are not familiar with it. The land bank can do a couple of things. One, you have access to remediation dollars, so environmental remediation you can do, and then also the land bank can clear title in 90 days. So especially for properties where it's difficult to turn those over because of compromised titles, the land bank can help with that. So what we did is in March we started a conversation with the Michigan Land Bank, and over the last several months we've been working with them to have an agreement directly with them, and that is on the agenda for approval tomorrow. We are the only county in the state of Michigan, I believe, or I should say the only city that's working directly with the land bank in this way, with the Michigan Land Bank in this way. Most other counties have countywide land banks, and so this will be an interesting journey and partnership with them. But it's good timing because we just went into a contract with Housing Next out of Ottawa County to help us look at our internal housing policies to make sure that we are assessing what we've done in the past, identifying where we need to improve, and coming up with a more aggressive housing strategy. And that work just started this month with Housing Next. And then we're working with the Chamber of Commerce as well as some funding from the Fry Foundation to do a housing market analysis. That too will be a countywide analysis, knowing that housing issues, they don't see jurisdictional lines. So we know that there's overlap and common issues, with our neighbors in Wyoming and Kentwood and Plainfield. So we're really hoping to start a conversation about what do we need to do in the city, but also how do we support kind of this regional, larger vision around affordable housing.
So with losing the relationship with Kent County and that Kent County Land Bank, did this kind of stop progress on what was going on? Were there properties lost because of it? Are we able to recover with this potential relationship with the state agency?
Yeah, it's been I would say it's twofold. In some areas, it definitely set us backwards. With the County Land Bank, we were looking at partnering with a company called Champion Homes to bring in manufactured homes that were manufactured in a warehouse. But being able to do that, put those on vacant sites and sell them for an affordable rate. So we were in the process, we had 3 that we did at the tail end of last year before the land bank was dissolved, but we were hoping to grow that and get dozens more in the ground and ready to be sold to families, affordable houses to be sold to families.
And did any ordinances or regulations have to be changed to allow for that type of housing?
We did change a couple setback rules, and but they were modest, I would say. So now in Novalab, which was created kind of out of the private sector kind of nonprofit that was created from the land bank in partnership with Champion Homes, their partners, they're actually doing a lot of this work now in other counties. So Muskegon County, I was just talking to some friends I have up there who are mayors, and they are looking at bringing in manufactured homes just because you can get them in the ground more quickly and they're more cost effective because they're built in in a warehouse, so people can work 24 hours and they have these processes to build houses more quickly.
All right.
Yeah.
What else is on the agenda? We always want to hear a little bit more about recreational marijuana since, is there a deadline coming up with an ordinance?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So we will have we're in the process right now of creating a license. So this would be a business license for all types of marijuana uses. And this would cover both medical marijuana and future recreational marijuana. So this would go, we have other business licenses at the city. So this will be an ordinance that will have a license. It will also allow us to do some enforcement of some of the Good Neighbor plans and MyVita plans that companies submitted. So that will be embedded in their license. And so the intent is to have a license in place by November 1. That's when the recreational marijuana, the state will start accepting recreational marijuana applications. In our license, if you already have received a permit for a medical marijuana facility, you'll have to get a license. It won't stop you from moving forward with your medical marijuana establishment, whether it's a grow operation or a dispensary. But if you want a recreational license, if you want a permit for the recreational marijuana, in the license it says that we are not going to start accepting applications in our planning department until April of next year. So what this does, it's a little confusing. I got some calls after our last meeting. It's a little confusing. We decided to go forward with a license and give us 6 months to work on the rules related to recreational. We decided to do that instead of opting out and then opting in. So the state is requiring local units to, that if they don't want to allow recreational marijuana, you have to opt out. So you have to pass a resolution to opt out. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to send the message to the community that we're not going to allow recreational marijuana, but we wanted to send a clear message that we need more time to work on our land use ordinance for recreational marijuana, because there are marijuana uses within the recreational language that are new and not just the ones that we already allow for medical.
Okay.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
I hope I was clear with explaining that.
And actually, it is a little bit confusing in terms of each municipality is doing it a little bit differently, and
Yes.
it's just not one cookie cutter solution to this for everybody. Each community has their own issues that they're concerned about. And
Yeah.
all right.
Hopefully by April of next year, we're not talking about marijuana anymore.
We'll have it settled
Taking up
for
a lot
sure.
of time.
Well, we're just about done, but I wanted to mention that our next meeting, we'll be together doing the show on November 4th. That's the day before the election. So there'll be a bit to talk about at that point. It's usual, encouraging people to take part in our local elections. Anything else you want to say as we head out?
The only last thing I'll say is that we also worked in partnership with the county this past month, and we're launching a community-wide awareness program about childhood lead poisoning. So hopefully you'll see some of those, and if you have any questions, please let us know. But we really want to educate folks about lead hazards in homes. I think a lot of people have misconceptions about lead poisoning in children, that the primary source is water. In reality, in our community, the primary source is lead paint in older homes. So we really want to get that message out, as well as what you can do to have testing done and to make sure that your child is safe.
All right.
Yeah.
Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss, thanks again. Another
Yeah.
City Connection kind of in the can, and we'll
Yeah.
look forward to the next one.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm Linda Galash, and this is City Connection here on GRTV Live Wire Channel 24. We'll be back next month.